Roll tape, Sean.
Every little thing you think that you need. Every little thing you think that you need. Every little thing that's just feeding your greed. Oh, I bet that you'd be fine without it.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to a special episode of the Minimalists podcast. My name is Joshua Fields Milburn, and what you're about to hear is a conversation between Ryan and me about criticism. We have people ask us about how do we deal with criticism, and they ask us this all the time, and what I can really tell you is that the more you do, the more good you do, the more you create, the more you put yourself out there, the more you're going to get criticized. And so it's really important to develop these calluses that help you deal with that criticism. We recorded this episode shortly after our podcast on debt aired, which was podcast number 28. And we got a lot of criticism on that. And so we wanted to sit down and have a conversation, but we didn't want it to just be a conversation about that podcast and that criticism. We didn't want it to be a rebuttal to that. And so we sat on this episode for a while so that we could deal with criticism as a whole and get this into our feed for you. Speaking of criticism, we've produced something new for you to criticize. If you enjoyed our first TEDx talk, we think you'll enjoy our new TEDx talk, which is called The Art of Letting Go. You can find that over at theminimalists.com or on our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/theminimalists. We recorded this out at TEDx Fargo last month, and it was sort of the obverse of our first talk, which was called A Rich Life with Less Stuff. And so the first talk was a lot of Ryan talking and me doing some sort of theatrics, and this is the opposite of that, where I did much of the talking, but Ryan performed a lot of the theatrics behind it. And we talked about minimalism and really the benefits behind being willing to let go of material things, of status, of identity, of sentimental items, just the art of letting go. We hope you enjoy that. Feel free to criticize it as much as you like. Also, speaking of criticism, thank you for all the kind words and feedback and otherwise on our documentary, which is called Minimalism, a documentary about the important things. People have seen that documentary in more than 100 countries right now, and you can watch it right now if you haven't already over at minimalismfilm.com. That has more than 6 hours of bonus interviews there. Also, it will soon be available on iTunes and on Amazon. We've heard you loud and clear. We know you want to see it on other platforms other than Vimeo. You can pre-order it right now on iTunes and Amazon. Just type in Minimalism Documentary. That's all for now. I hope you enjoy this conversation that Ryan and I had about criticism. And I think we're live. Well, we're not actually live.
We're taped to live.
We're live to tape?
Yeah, live to tape. We'll go with that.
But actually, that's not even true because Sean can edit this, right?
Oh, yeah.
Welcome to the Minimalist Podcast, where we discuss what it means to live a meaningful life with less. I'm Joshua Fields Milburn.
And I'm Ryan Nicodemus.
I thought maybe I got my name wrong for a second.
Together, that makes us the Minimalists. I don't know. For some reason, I thought there was more to than introduction. It's weird when I don't have like a
sheet in front of you.
Yeah,
we're off script today.
We're
freestyling today. Ryan, we're sitting down today, and he and I were having a text conversation yesterday, and I figured we'd just pull this into the podcast. And our last episode was about debt, and it's one of our most popular ones in terms of great listener feedback and just great responses and people saying thank you so much. But then there's this other side as well. It's so Ryan, I'll tell you this, it saddens me that debt is such a controversial topic.
Yeah, I was pretty shocked. Like the people who were just defending how great debt can be. It saddens me how much people believe in debt, I guess, is what it...
Well, I think we've been sold this meme for so long that you're supposed to be in debt. And people don't like to hear the absolutes, like when I say, there's no such thing as good debt. And they'll give examples of, this heart surgery I had to have. And it's like, of course. Like, I say...
Debt can be a tool.
And it can be justified as well. And so... I want people to keep in mind when we're giving out, when we're talking about these things, this is what works well for us. And we're not being prescriptive about it. If you want to go out and get all that good debt that you want, I feel bad for you because I associate that with not having enough freedom.
Yeah. Well, and I'll be honest with you, Josh. If we've got a listener out there who can send me the $1 million portfolio on how they amassed a bunch of wealth from incurring massive amounts of debt, I'm open to changing my mind.
Right.
Send me the
how
portfolio.
you can do that, and how you can do that regularly. I mean,
Right.
I think Donald Trump is the poster child of this, and we won't get into politics, and not that you and I would necessarily agree with Donald Trump on just about anything, but the truth is he is the master of leveraging debt to at least be ostensibly wealthy, and it's debatable as to whether or not he's worth $150 million or $10 billion or somewhere in between, depending on the estimates. But he is the debt leverager, and that's certainly what he does. But I think for the layperson, what we need to do is we need to step back and say, is this debt justifiable? Is getting a new car and having a 5-6 year, essentially a mortgage on your car, is that justifiable? And for me, the answer is always going to be no. And then of course we somehow pissed people off with the whole the credit score discussion. When people get frustrated because I will tell you that having a credit score is really having a debt score. And a lot of people say, you don't understand. I have to have a credit score because of X, Y, or Z. And you know what? If you really feel that you need to improve your credit score, great. I'm going to encourage you not to get into debt to improve your credit score. Keep that in mind. Your credit score is the only way to really build a credit score is to have reoccurring debt. Now, you can game the system and you can pay it off regularly and still maintain a credit score. I'm not telling you that having a credit score is a bad thing.
Right, of course not.
What I'm saying is it's not a necessary thing for us either.
Right.
Even if you go out to purchase a house, you can get a mortgage that does not require you to have a credit score. They require you to have proof of income. And by the way, they're going to require that anyway. You can't go to them and say, I don't make any money, but I have an 800 FICO score. Can you give me a $300,000 loan for a house? No. Can you prove you can pay for it? No, but my credit is outstanding. Okay. And so, Ryan, I didn't want to talk today really about that. I mean, here's the thing. Realize that any of the supposed advice that we give out, it's not advice for you specifically. This is a recipe that Ryan and I are sharing from our own lives. And what we'd love for you to do is tweeze out ingredients and hope that you're able to create your own recipe to apply those ingredients to your life so that you can figure out the path that's right for you. And the path that's right for me is a debt-free path. And we give these tips because we care about people, and we don't want you to have to live under that anchor, that weight of all this debt. And believe me, I know about it. I had 6 figures worth of debt, close to $500,000 if you count my mortgage in debt, and getting free from that it opens up all these possibilities. I'm no longer tied to a particular lifestyle. I'm not tied to an income. You don't have to be tied to a geography. You're not tied to anything financial, and that's beautiful because then everything you do becomes deliberate. Whereas before, Ryan, you and I were working in this corporate career, and we became tied to that lifestyle. And I had to make at least $100,000 a year in order to just pay my bills, basically.
To keep up on your debt.
Yeah, to keep up with your
debt payments,
right? To keep up with the Joneses, because the Joneses had similar debt to me.
Right.
I mean, you remember the neighborhood I used to live in? Yeah. Every house looked identical. It was Stepford almost, and the suburban house with more toilets than people and a full basement, just full of stuff that I wasn't using, but I was paying for. I was paying for the space to store it. I had a storage locker on top of that for a brief period of time because, I had already fully organized my basement full of stuff, and I had to pay for that. And now I'm paying to take care of the other stuff I'm not using. And so I don't want you to be crippled by debt. I don't want you to be confined by your debt. And so if you can get out of debt, that's really all it is. And today I really wanted to move into something. I really want to talk about criticism, because we got just a ton. I was shocked by the amount of criticism, and people wrote articles about it. And thankfully,
I didn't catch that. They wrote articles about the podcast.
See, Ryan does a better job of
ignoring the criticism.
Of just blocking this out altogether.
I just don't care anymore. Is the thing. Like I just
and look, I know. And so you and I have done a really good job of building calluses over the last 7 years.
5 years ago, I would have like read every bit of criticism
and been torn.
Defended
apart by
myself
it.
as much as I could. Yeah,
sure. And I dipped my toe in the stream this time around and responded to some people on Twitter. And again, I want to point this out. Probably most of the time is 99% of the feedback that we get is outstanding, and then the other 1% is just glaring, hate and people throwing
Rotten Tomatoes at us.
Yeah, I was just thinking feces, but Rotten Tomatoes as well. I just feel like sometimes it's like you when you go to the zoo and you see like a chimpanzee just like throwing feces at a wall. That's what it feels like sometimes. And so I want to talk about good criticism and bad criticism today, because it's not like we're not allergic to it, but I think most of it is bad. So let's start with the bad side of things. In the corporate world, we used to talk about the seagulls, and so we have an essay from our book Essential, and I just wanted to read a quick excerpt from that. This essay is called Seagulls. Criticism is inevitable unless you do nothing important with your life. But whenever you put yourself out there, whenever you expose your ideas to the world, be it via social media, blogs, or business meetings, you're effectively wearing a sign that says, "Criticize me." Of course, some criticism is beneficial. Feedback from people we respect helps us grow. Other criticism, however, is toxic. The most virulent example is the cynical internet troll. So we're kind of talking about that today, I think. Trolls are like seagulls. They fly in, shit all over you, and fly away. And they're not informed enough to understand the implications of their own actions. Truth be told, most critics bring nothing to the table. They simply project their own insecurities and add zero value to the conversation. And if we listen to them, their toxicity permeates our thoughts, making it difficult to create anything worthwhile. So, you have two choices. Either create and be criticized, or hide from meaningful work because you're scared of a little bird poop. Personally, I'd rather cover my head and craft something worth criticizing. And Ryan, I think that's really what we're doing now. Is we really open ourselves up to the world. We have by having an audience in front of us. Whether when we first started and had 52 people show up to the blog, or now where it's approaching 5 million people, and the podcast is approaching 1 million people, we have a sign here that says "Criticize me." And I think the thing is, we want to delineate between good criticism and bad criticism here. Right. But I don't know about you, but for me, I tend to lean on people that I care about and whose opinions I trust. And it's why I'll call and I'll ask you, what do you think about this? Or with Sean, if I'm writing, hey, Sean, can you tell me about this sentence? Or do you think this story really strikes a chord? And what would you change about this? Because these are opinions that I appreciate. And then also when we are publishing a book, we'll go out to a whole bunch of alpha readers and the beta readers and ask for people who are willing to give us criticism up front, but do so in a meaningful, helpful, articulate way, as opposed to people who just become seagulls and fly over and shit on us.
So what's the last, whether it was in regards to the Minimalists or your personal life, what's the last good criticism you got?
I think I get it from you all the time, but they're
Wait a minute, I criticize you all the time.
Well, no, I think so, but I ask for it from you, and I think that's what's different. You and I talk about stuff all the time, and I think criticism can be as easy as, I would do it this way, but here's why. And that's why it's good. It's not... It's the opposite of what bad criticism is. Bad criticism is, I don't like that. That is stupid. You are wrong. I'm so disappointed in your opinion. Okay, but that doesn't tell me why it's bad, and it's not helpful.
Right.
So good criticism usually is helpful, and that comes from when someone's intentions are good, and they're not just lashing out. They're not having this fake outrage. And so that's actually a pretty good segue here. The thing I really wanted to read today is one of the things that we have this internet culture now that we've set up that has mimicked outrage for no reason. And it was amazing to me to see people on Twitter and social media and other places who are outraged by the idea that there's no such thing as good debt. People like legitimately got outraged by it. And so I want to read one more quick excerpt from our book Essential, and this one is about fake outrage. There are times when outrage is an appropriate reaction to current events. The Twin Towers, cheating spouses, and violent crimes. All injustices, all valid reasons for momentary rage. Most of the time, however, our outrage is unwarranted. We shouldn't be offended, but we are. This is especially true when within the context of today's internet culture. Social media has become a breeding ground for armchair criticism, faux discontent, and passive-aggressive, quote, disappointment. A place in which we attempt to, paradoxically, decree our tallest building by ridiculing every nearby structure. Let's break that down real quick, Ryan. So I think that's one of the big symptoms here, man, is people, in order to not feel small, we as people want to criticize other people. You know, it's the old adage of, and there's two ways to have a tallest building in town, and one is to obviously tear everyone else's building down. That doesn't give you a taller building.
No.
It just means you're comparing yourself to everyone else, as opposed to going out and building a taller building. And it's amazing to me that why people would want to follow what we do and yet criticize it without necessarily trying to help. I mean, I don't understand.
Well, it's because we're challenging their beliefs, right?
It's interesting.
Or their values.
Yeah.
Anytime you're challenging someone's values and beliefs, I mean, they're going to have... I know I have a visceral reaction every time my beliefs or values get challenged.
Isn't that interesting, though? Because maybe we're not... I don't think we're not personally going out trying to challenge an individual's beliefs, but what you're saying is the idea that's been sparked... they're now challenging their own beliefs. And that's a good thing, though, right? Because for me, I will listen to, I mean, this is a really, really good example here. When I listen to podcasts, I will try to listen to like Bill Maher, who is very far left, and then Glenn Beck, who's very far right, in the same sitting, so to speak, or same walking session, because I don't necessarily agree with either of their opinions 100%. But it challenges my beliefs. And you know what? It helps me strengthen the ones I believe in, or the ones that are weak, it helps me reformulate them or completely change it altogether.
I would dare to say, and this is pure speculation, right? But I would dare to say that anyone who reacts viscerally like that towards anything we talk about, whether it's debt or whether it's stuff or whether it's collections or whatever it may be, I would dare to say that they do not have that approach with life. They don't have that approach of, okay, I'm going to look at all sides, I'm going to consider all sides, and I'm going to see how I feel, and I am going to challenge my beliefs. I mean, I know when I was being raised Jehovah's Witness, you know, those beliefs that I had, I just remember literally like making up excuses in my mind to justify those beliefs. Whether it was, I remember the first time I did this, I was young and I asked my dad, I was like, Dad, I don't understand, why doesn't the Bible talk about dinosaurs? Because I loved dinosaurs.
Yeah.
And he was like, well, you know, the Bible does talk about monsters of the sea and, you know, but you know, my guess is that, you know, Jehovah put those on the earth to break up the earth, to help break up the earth. Nowhere in the Bible does it say that. But as you know, like listening, I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Put dinosaurs on the earth to break up the earth. So like I would use, and I continued to use that anecdotal. It's not even anecdotal. It's made up. Right. I mean, it's you know, I use that excuse to to really seed and root my beliefs and a lot of other little things like that. And looking back,
was that grasping? Like it was. I need any answer to fill this.
I don't think it was grasping as much as I felt like I had it, figured out 98% of the way, and like there was 2% of the way that like I had to kind of make up these little things for.
Isn't that funny how as we get older? I just turned 35, and as we get older, we another adage, other truism is, the more I learn, the less I know, and I feel that way. And I think what's interesting is I know that I don't have all the answers now. In fact, it's funny. I remember growing up, my mom used to always tell me, I would ask her something, I just don't understand this, I don't understand that, and it was something that was complex or emotional or spiritual or whatever, and she goes, just wait until you're 35. You'll understand when you're 35. And at first that pissed me off because I'm like, I want to understand now, explain it to me. And I think what she was saying is you need to get enough life experience, and by 35, what you'll understand is that you'll never understand it all. And you'll never have all the answers, and that's the nice thing. And we don't pretend that we have all the answers. We have some very good answers to some things that have worked well for us, but generally that's through first failing at least once, sometimes more than once, and being able to learn from that car crash and walk away from it. And in some cases, literally from a car crash, like in 2014 when you almost died in that car crash. I mean, learning from these crashes and then course correcting thereafter. And so much of what I've learned is a course correction in my own life, and that's really what we hope to share here. And so I'm totally fine with people criticizing it if it makes sense and if it adds value, and I'm even willing to change my perspective. I think some criticism is good, but getting back to those seagulls and those trolls, it's not productive. And at first it can hurt your feelings, but the other thing that's nice about it is over time, Ryan and I have been doing this for almost 6 years now, and it's just like when you first start working out, like with heavy weights, and you start getting those calluses, and man, your fingers hurt. Or when you first start playing guitar, and your tips of your fingers are bleeding after a while, and you realize that, okay, I need to build up these calluses. And I think over time, enough criticism allows you to build up those calluses. It doesn't make it not hurt; it makes it hurt less.
Well, it helps me to like really see the criticism for what it is. Because, if someone walked into a room right now and was like, hey, Ryan, you're fat. Like, there would be a piece of me that would be like, oh, man, do these shorts make my butt look big? Or like,
is this black t-shirt not flattering?
And like, and those things would go through my head. But then I would also take a moment and be like, wait a minute. Who is this person that's calling me fat? Mm-hmm. And why would they just come in here and say that? At the end of the day, like, I can look at that and be like, oh, okay, well, that's not someone I want to be friends with.
Right.
That's someone who probably has their own bit of insecurity and they're trying to project something on me. So building up those calluses, like you said, it's not that it makes it hurt less as much as I can look at criticism now and say, oh, wow, that person is just having a visceral reaction.
Right.
I'm sorry that they're having a bad day, or that I have hit a chord with them that has really given them this reaction, but there is nothing valuable in the words that they are saying to me. But the obverse of that is sometimes people do say stuff, and I look at it, I'm like, oh shit, like they actually have a point. Like, I asked you about the most useful criticism you've had recently that you can remember. I remember when we had over the weekend, we had set up a post. It was like right after the Orlando stuff. Mm-hmm. And it was set up before the Orlando stuff happened.
Oh yeah.
And
this was on Facebook.
Yeah, it was on Facebook, and it said it was something like, because we put quotes on Facebook and stuff. Our readers know that, and it was the quote, "Most emergencies aren't."
Yeah,
really shitty timing.
Yeah, but it was scheduled. Well, let's put that into context. So there's one person who helps out with some of our social media stuff. Her name's Jessica Lynn Williams. She's over at the Mind Palace podcast. You've actually heard her do a guest cast on here with her friend Melissa as well. But she helps out with she's on our team. She helps post some social media stuff. So Ryan and I interact a lot with people on social media. But what she does is she finds interesting articles to post on our Facebook and Twitter, and just so that we can share other simple living tips with you. But then she also goes and so we have hundreds of essays at theminimalists.com, and also we have 3 books about intentional living. So she goes and pulls individual quotes once a month from those books and those essays, our words, and puts them onto our social media feeds to be inspiration for other people.
Yeah.
And so she'll schedule them a month in advance. And so right after the Orlando shooting, the terrorist attack, she already had this thing scheduled. It was like the day of or the day after. It was that Saturday actually, and it said, most emergencies aren't.
And it was pulled from this essay that we wrote that in context, it made a lot of sense of most emergencies aren't.
And it's still very true. It still holds true the vast majority of the time. But you're right. It was totally bad timing.
It was bad timing. And someone on social media was like, what the hell are you doing? Like that's really inappropriate right now with the happenings. And that made sense to me. Like that type of criticism, I was like, oh, wow, like I didn't realize that this is what we had scheduled.
Right. And none of us did, because you can't plan for every tragedy, right?
Right.
In fact, we've written about that. The other thing that I've got a ton of criticism for was an essay right after the Paris attacks, but I think it's apropos for just about every tragedy that we have, and it was called After the Tragedy. And let me see if I can pull that up real quick.
But I mean, to your point though, it's not an issue when someone has a legitimate concern. Like if I can look at some criticism, even if, I mean, that particular criticism that I'm talking about that when we posted that quote, most emergencies aren't, they didn't have any, like there was no cuss words. There was no one being like super. Oh,
there were some people I had to block.
Oh, it was that bad.
Well, let's talk about that real quick.
I didn't see it.
So we both do this all the time, but I tend to be a bit more liberal with it than others, just because if you just want to be a troll, and especially if you have an egg avatar and you're showing up and saying stupid stuff or you're cussing at me, I've gotten death threats on social media before. It was especially after this Paris tragedy thing. Yeah. And so, I don't mess around with that. Yeah. But if someone is just is being obscene or rude, I'm going to block you because that is not helpful.
Right.
And so the question that I ask is the one I got from Dan Harris, and I ask this all the time now. Is this useful?
Yeah.
And if I can say no, then I need to move on from it.
Yeah, I even the obscene comments, I can look through the obscenities. And like literally, like I will cut out all the obscenities and look at the actual comment, and I can still look at that and be like, this is useful or it's not useful. 99.999% of the time, the obscenities, the comments with the obscenities are not useful criticism. But there are some times where it's like, wow, that could have been said a lot nicer. But yeah, I see where they're coming from.
You can have curse words,
sure.
but to me, curse words, when used well, are not obscene. And I think that is the perfect example here. So after Paris, but you could post this after the Orlando attack. Let's talk about this, because this is a perfect setup for criticism, actually. So this was last year during the whole Paris thing, which was awful. But the essay is called After the Tragedy. We'll put it, Sean, if you can put it in the show notes as well. Yesterday, the morning after the horrific terrorist attacks in Paris, I posted the following quote on my personal Instagram account. In light of the Paris tragedy, I'm reminded of Anthony Jeselnik's uncomfortable but honest commentary on internet, quote, sadness. To paraphrase Jeselnik, when something horrible happens, everybody runs to social media and writes the exact same thing. My thoughts and prayers are with the victims. Do you know what that's worth? Fucking nothing. Less than nothing. You aren't giving any of your time, your money, or even your compassion. All you're saying is, don't forget about me today. Ergo, let's do something more than post a stock photo of a peace sign on social media. Let's find ways to contribute beyond ourselves. And of course, this is continuing the essay here. The positive comments on this post were numerous, but there were also a spattering of fake outrage, as well as some crude personal attacks and even one potential death threat, which I deleted. Some people missed the point entirely. They seem to take my post as a personal assault, as if I was judging them for their social media postings. But of course I wasn't, because I know better. I understand that judgment is but a mirror reflecting the insecurities of the person who's doing the judging. Besides, I don't give a damn about internet trolls' hurt feelings. I'm concerned about the well-being of the victims. And so rather than judge the comment thread crusaders, I wanted to emphasize that we must do more than exercise our Twitter fingers. A hashtag and a photo alone will not solve the problem, and they can be dangerous because they ape the form of real action. If you want to effectively contribute after the tragedy, here are a few options. Number one, money. If you can afford it, donate to charities that are helping the victims. Even a couple bucks makes a difference. Number two, resources. Our most precious resources are our time and our attention, our influence and our creativity, all of which, when done well, can prove even more beneficial than charitable donations. Here's an idea. Find a handful of friends, coworkers, or members of your community and have a discussion about how you might use these resources to collectively contribute, not only for this tragedy, but for the everyday world around you. You'll be amazed by how much a small group of compassionate people can uncover. Then, whatever you decide, work together to take action. And here's the point here. Ultimately, caring is a verb. Real love and support and understanding means we are concerned enough to express it through our actions. Sure, social media can be a good first step, as long as it's just that, a first step. Once we've expressed our grief and shown our solidarity, we must then do something about it. Because if we don't, then all we're left with are well-meaning but solipsistic status updates. And that's what I want to avoid, Ryan. And so, of course, people took offense to the thing that cleared up the offense here as well. But the good news is it also encouraged people to take action. And so we got tons of photos from people who were like, you're right, let's do this. Let me get involved with my community. I live in Kalamazoo, but I can still do something. And in fact, Ryan, so you and I, we're in Missoula, Montana right now, but the coffee shop that we started earlier this year in St. Petersburg, Florida, we did an event there this past weekend for the Pride Parade, and we donated 100% of the proceeds to the Victims Fund, 100% of the profits, rather, to the Victims Fund there. And then next month, Ryan and I are flying down to Orlando with Sean, and we're going to do a charity event in Orlando with our film, Minimalism, the documentary, and 100% of those proceeds as well, including the proceeds from our distributor. They're donating to all of the victims from this Orlando shooting. So it's good to start talking about this stuff on the internet, on social media, as long as that's a good spark to actually do something about it. Sure. And so it's not just me and you who are doing something. It allows other people to contribute to these victims' funds as well. And even if you don't have the money, you have all the other resources I just mentioned. You can get involved with your community. You can use your creativity. What gifts do you have that you can contribute back? You can help the victims of these things, as opposed to starting. You can start with social media, but let's go beyond that. And this isn't me criticizing an individual. It's saying, here's what I notice in myself, and I need to be willing to move beyond my keyboard and actually do something good for the world.
Right. Yeah, and we're not like this is not an episode to defend ourselves, by the way. Like we're not bringing up all the criticism and just so we can sit here and say like, oh, all your criticism means nothing. I mean, ultimately, what I would like our listeners to get from this is don't be scared of criticism. Like go out if you have something subversive that you want to talk about, then talk about it if you feel really, really strongly. I think the only time you shouldn't is if you're not being genuine or if it doesn't align with your values and beliefs. But even for the folks out there who are trying to integrate minimalism into their lives, and you're going to get some criticism for it. But again, put yourself out there. I mean, if you are following the status quo and worrying about what other people think about you and really letting that control your life, well, then you're not really living your life. You're living a life that other people want you to live. So
that really reminds me of Seth Godin. When so Seth Godin, he's my favorite blogger for sure. Remember that conference we were at, Tara? She attended one of Seth's programs, but she got up and she was young, maybe 19, 20 years old. It was at Misfit. She made a sign that said Seth Godin is my Beyonce. Yeah. And I just loved that because Seth Godin, I think, is also my Beyonce when it comes to blogging. But he talks about criticism, and what you're saying, I agree, that is the takeaway here. And so here's what he wrote not too long ago. Actually, it was a while ago on criticism. Why haven't you launched the thing that you'd like to launch? Fear. Not just the fear of failure. Fear of failure is actually overrated as an excuse. Why? Because if you work for someone, then more often than not, the actual cost of failure is absorbed by the organization, not you. If your product launch fails, they're not going to fire you. The company will make a bit less money and then move on. What people are afraid of isn't failure. It's blame, criticism. We don't choose to be remarkable because we're worried about criticism. We hesitate to create innovative movies, launch new human resource initiatives, design a menu that makes diners take notice, or give an audacious sermon because we're worried deep down that someone will hate it and call us on it. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. What a waste of money. Who's responsible for this? Sometimes the criticism doesn't even have to be that obvious. The fear of, quote, I'm surprised you launched this without doing more research, is enough to get many people to do a lot more research, to study something to death and then kill it. Hey, at least you didn't get criticized. Fear of criticism is a powerful deterrent because the criticism doesn't actually have to occur for the fear to set in. Ooh. That's deep, man. So the criticism doesn't have to occur. You don't even have to get criticized. You just have to have the fear of being criticized to not do something meaningful. Watch a few people get criticized for being innovative, and it's pretty easy to persuade yourself that the very same thing will happen to you if you're not careful. Constructive criticism, of course, is a terrific tool, and that's really the point I want to get to here. If a critic tells you, quote, I don't like it, or this is disappointing, he's done no good at all. In fact, quite the opposite is true. He used his power to injure without giving you any information to help you do better next time. Worse, he hasn't given those listening any data to make a thoughtful decision on their own. Not only that, but by refusing to reveal the basis for his criticism, he's being a coward because there's no way to challenge his opinion. I admit it. When I get a bad review, my feelings are hurt. After all, it would be nice if a critic said the title of mine was a breakthrough, an inspirational, thoughtful book that explains how everything, from politics to wine, is marketed through stories. But sometimes they don't, which is just about enough to ruin your day. But this time, it didn't. It didn't because I realized what a badge of honor it is to get a bit of shallow criticism. It means that I confounded expectations, that I didn't deliver the sequel or the simple practical guide that some expected. It means that, in fact, I did something worth remarking on. I think that's the point, Ryan. I'm not going to read the rest of this essay, but if you want to do something remarkable, something worth remarking on, then sometimes some of those remarks are going to be criticism. I'm always saying our books haven't made it until we get those one-star reviews. Now, I don't want a bunch of one-star reviews that are inarticulate, that aren't going to help me out or whatever, but the point is that you're going to get those because people are going to remark. And the alternative is for us to do something that is unremarkable. Your average person who works for the IRS, unless they're doing something that is changing the way that taxes are collected or something, if you're just filling out forms and checking the boxes, you are literally doing something that is unremarkable. and you might get your peer review once a year or whatever, or your boss's review, but it's not something that is going to be remarked on by others, and it's not having an effect. It's not influencing other people to make changes that they can make.
Wasn't there a New York Times or something where they did a test, and essentially they found out that people were more scared of being criticized or embarrassed than they were of death?
Yes. That stems from the studies of public speaking, and the number one fear of public speaking is, of course, criticism, but it's immediate criticism. That's why it's so drastic, right? Because you and I can get in front of a crowd now after doing it hundreds of times. But I remember when I first started doing public speaking, it was for our stores. So Ryan and I used to work in the retail world, and when I was maybe 22. I was managing 2 retail stores at the time, and Ryan, you worked at one of those stores. And I remember I used to, at the beginning of the month, I'd get up and I'd give a promo pack discussion, right? I'd get both stores together and get up in front of the dozen or so employees. They were 2 small stores, and I was terrified to speak in front of a dozen people who I knew really well. And I was 1/2 hour a month. I'd spend so much time prepping, and I was still just stammering and barely getting through the talk and constantly reading from my notes. But over time, you do that enough, and you build up that muscle. And yes, you can start small like that. You don't have to speak in front of 3,000 people, and you and I can do that now, and it's not like we don't get butterflies beforehand. We still certainly get butterflies, or at least I know I do. It's not the same. It's not the same feeling of terror. It's a feeling of excitement.
Right.
And I'm able to understand that now. Physiologically, they're pretty similar symptoms, terror and excitement. But I'm able to sort of manifest that as excitement after doing this and knowing what to expect. Because the worst thing that could happen is actually not that bad. The worst thing that could happen in front of 3,000 people, you and I could get up there and just start telling lame, Rodney Dangerfield jokes. And actually, his jokes are pretty funny.
Take my wife, please.
What did he say? He said, I need 2 women. That way, when I fall asleep, they have someone to talk to. But we could get up in front of
Tell
the
a bunch
crowd.
of lame jokes like that. Yes.
Yeah, and it would go horribly because we're not Rodney Dangerfield.
Right.
But the worst thing that could happen is that people wouldn't like it, and that the worst thing that would happen is I'd be wasting their time, which would be unfortunate. I don't want to do that.
I would care more about wasting their time than the criticism I would get.
Right, and really, the criticism would be deserved. The main criticism would be you wasted my time. And I think that's really the point here is as we're getting criticized, it allows us to build up those calluses to allow us to do things that are actually more remarkable. Because the opposite is a life where you're not alive at all. And so it's accepting and in many ways appreciating the criticism for what it is. Even the shitty criticism where it's, you know what, I didn't like this. This sucked. I was disappointed, which is actually, let me get back to this. So before we close out here, I want to finish that fake outrage essay here because it talks about that. And so here we sit, glued to our keyboards and glowing terminals, stewing in a disturbing mixture of anger and schadenfreude, as we scroll through the endless stream, waiting for the next politically incorrect gaffe to ignite our flame of fake indignation. Rarely is a meaningful discussion even attempted. Just take one look at the comments at any popular YouTube video. That's your prime example there.
Yeah.
You go to a YouTube video. I mean, our TED Talk has close to a couple million views. There's no way I'm going to go look at those.
No,
those comments.
I did the other day. Yeah, it was just like,
I don't even want to hear about it. Because here's the thing.
It's horrible.
That is a sea of trolls that is unproductive. And so seek out the productive ones, but also appreciate the other ones that are there because it means what you're doing is being remarked upon. Within recent years, the outrage has amped up considerably, making room for endless commentary on banal pop culture happenings. The perils of Deflategate, a former Olympian's new pronoun, Anthony Weiner's wiener. Not to mention a dozen new presidential candidates who have entered a race in which the main qualification seems to be outrage for whatever is said by their opponents, all of which have incited tantrums from both sides of each, quote, issue. But who gives a damn Well, sadly, the answers seem to be everybody gives a damn. Because everyone has the tools to be an amateur critic now. There are scores of trolls waiting to disgorge their opposing viewpoint. Even your authors here, the minimalists, aren't immune to the wrath of the fuming masses. A topic as seemingly innocuous as minimalism, or in this case, innocuous as debt. I mean, you can't get more innocuous than that, I don't think. As minimalism or debt, somehow infuriates hundreds, if not thousands, of noisy keyboard mercenaries. Without good reason, the self-righteous are offended by that which doesn't really affect them. And because they've decided that someone else's lifestyle is somehow an affront to their own, that's exactly what you were talking about a moment ago, Ryan, they reflexively spout their gibberish in an attempt to justify a viewpoint that nobody asked them to justify in the first place. We've all done this at some point, and that's really why I wanted to talk about this today, right? We're all critics. We're all responsible for this. So when I criticize now, I want to make sure it's constructive. And so whether that's leaving a review on Yelp or on Google, or if it's giving feedback to someone, even if it's a 1-star review, it needs to be constructive. And if it's 5-star review, if I have an amazing experience, I'm going to go out of my way not to just say, hey, that was great, because that's not constructive either. Tell them why it's great. Why did it resonate with me? And that's really important for me to do. So we've all done this at some point. We've all gotten offended without asking ourselves why, and then used our fake outrage to cast judgment upon others. We do this. We judge people because it helps us feel better. And pretending to be offended is much easier than attempting to breach the walls of introspection. Man, sometimes I read something like this and I go back to something. I need to take my own advice sometimes. Like let's breach the walls of introspection instead of reacting on impulse. But this good feeling is fleeting, of course. And so we judge more and more in an attempt to give grounds for our initial judgment, all the while increasing our dosage of outrage. It's an ugly downward spiral. And from a spectator's distance, standing far from the backlog of comments and posts and @replies, the enraged look like fools because when we step away and observe, we soon realize that this kind of judgment says more about the judge than the judged. After all, judgment is just a mirror reflecting the insecurities of the person who's doing the judging. True, we all judge, but it is best to do so with reason, respect, and empathy, rather than rage, resentment, and disdain that have suffused our everyday lives. But the truth is that for the vast majority of us, most outrage-inducing events are irrelevant, and thus outrage itself is a waste of time. Few people are affected by deflated footballs or transgender celebrities, and yet we act as if these events directly shape our lives. We judge, we throw in our unsolicited 2 cents, and then feel a particular kind of emptiness when the dust clears and all that remains is a heap of hurt feelings. Allowing others to offend is natural. It's a default setting, but it is also unnecessary. An offended man or woman is a defenseless man or woman. But it doesn't have to be this way, at least not on an individual level. We can choose not to be offended. So stop it. Let it go. Change the channel. Turn it off. Unsubscribe, unfriend, unfollow, mute, block, walk away, breathe. Outrage is a fool's errand, and unless you're a fool, you needn't carry the weight of another person's burdens. Let the fools do their own heavy lifting. Perhaps what we need is a reduced dose of outrage and a higher dosage of letting go. You see, letting go of outrage is not the same as embracing apathy. Outrage and apathy are obverse sides of the same coin. By refusing to be offended by life's minutia, we refuse to step into outrage's blast radius, and thus we refuse to cast judgment arbitrarily. Ultimately, avoiding the outrage is how we can approach controversial and interesting topics with honest, worthwhile discussions. Even when an occasion warrants outrage, such as murder or racism or Game 6 of the 1998 NBA Finals,
Great game.
No, it was not a great game. The game ruined my life. What we do with our ire is a different story. Just because our emotions are justified, that doesn't mean we're required to acquiesce. Rarely does acting out of rage, justified or not, lead to a desirable outcome. Besides, the only person who has the right to worry about deflating Tom Brady's balls is Janelle Bunchen. And if that joke offends you, then please go back to the top and read this essay again.
That's crazy.
Well, Ryan, I know we're in a conference room right now, and we need to give this up in a minute. Any last words on criticism you want to talk about?
Yeah, I would just say for anyone listening, if you want to criticize us, keep it coming. Just try to make it useful and not so visceral. And if our whole goal here is to add value to everyone's lives. It is not to listen to ourselves pontificate. It's not so we can feel like we're some kind of minimalist gurus. This is literally for you to help you. If it's not helping you, then turn us off. You have the option of doing that.
Yeah, and I would encourage you to turn off anything that is not broadening your horizon, isn't helping you either change your beliefs or strengthen your beliefs as well. So whether that's us or blogs you follow or podcasts you follow or whatever else it may be, movies you watch, however you spend your time, it should help you grow. And ideally, hopefully we're helping you grow. I think the cool thing is you don't have to agree with us 100% of the time either. Mm-hmm. We don't even agree with us 100% of the time. And Ryan and I, even when we agree, we tend to approach an agreement from a different side of it. And we help each other get there. And so I encourage you to help yourself get there as well by listening, by reading, by doing the work and doing the introspection necessary. And part of that will actually be listening to criticism and then doing something worth criticizing.
You know what's crazy, man? I feel so strongly about what we do. Like I just have never lived a life that has been so much in alignment with my values and beliefs. Like I feel so good about what we do. Mm-hmm. If literally it was the obverse where we got 99% visceral crappy feedback and just that one person was like, dude, you changed my life. Yeah. Like, thank you so much for your perspective. It really helped me with my perspective and it would be worth it for me.
Yeah. Yeah, thankfully it's not that right now, but yeah.
I'm not saying I want it to be that way.
Right. And I think that's the other thing too. We don't do things to just try to get people outraged on purpose. No. We're not out here being shock jocks or whatever. Mm-hmm. We genuinely want to add value to other people's lives, and whether that's helping them with their clutter or their financial clutter, which is debt, or anything else, we just want to provide you with that recipe, take some ingredients out of it, and go from there. Before we close out, we've got a couple things. We're going to be in Fargo, North Dakota on July 19th, and then we're going to be in Orlando. We have a special charity event down there on August, I think it's the 11th. You can find both of those dates on our tour page over at theminimalists.com/tour. And of course, our documentary comes out on August 2nd, finally. Woo! Yeah, it's in theaters in Canada and Australia right now, but then the documentary comes out August 2nd. It's going to be on a whole bunch of different platforms. You can pre-order it right now, though. If you just go to minimalismfilm.com, you can get all the details for that. If you pre-order it over there on Vimeo, you actually get 6 hours of bonus interviews and content as well. And Sean, if you can throw in maybe we'll put some voicemails in here, some tips and tricks from some of our listeners. We'll add them in here right now.
Hi guys, my name's Amanda. I'm from Revelstoke, Canada, and I have a suggestion regarding how to get out of student debt because I was able to get out of over $35,000 in student debt in under a year. And I wanted to share how I did it. So it's kind of a crazy idea. Basically, I did it by working through university and also afterwards for a few years by getting paid to travel the world. And specifically what I did was work on cruise ships. And during university, I worked as youth activity staff during every university break possible. So all summer, all Christmas break, all spring break. So that's what I did all throughout my university years. And then the year after I got out of uni, when I had the $35,000 worth of student loans, when I finished my program, I actually went on board full time. I got promoted to an onboard crew training position. And in that first year of full-time employment, I was able to pay off my full $35,000 in student loans. So that was just really, really cool. So not only did I get to do, work my way through and help pay for my university while I was working on board, I was able to pay off any remaining debt right after. And I did that for after my first full-time year, I did cruise ships for another 3 or 4 years, so 10 years in total. And so some other examples might be outside of cruise ships might be teaching English in Asia or working at resorts during uni breaks or even after university as well. But finding a way to work a cool job, get paid to travel perhaps, but finding a job that's going to pay for accommodation, groceries, flights, so that all of the money that you're making, you're actually saving and able to be putting towards your debt. So I hope this little tip helps people, and thanks so much for all you do.
Hi, guys. My name is Rachel. I'm from Lisle, Illinois, and I've been a long-time listener of you guys ever since your podcast started. I think I've listened to all your episodes. Maybe I'm missing a couple. But I was just listening to the one about travel, and the question again came up, does this add value into my life, and can I afford this? And I just had a thought about the question, can I afford this, that I kind of wanted to add into the mix. So you guys have talked about, can I afford this monetarily? Can I afford it to take up space in my life or in my house? And I was also thinking, can I afford the anxiety or like the feeling of guilt that might come along with purchasing something or spending money on something that somewhere inside me I know doesn't really align with my values. And I thought of this after the other person who called in about their compulsive travel costs. And so maybe a question that he could ask himself, he knows he loves travel, that in itself is not a bad thing, but he could ask himself, can I afford how I feel like that twinge of, not being happy with myself that kind of goes into the mix of how much he enjoys travel? Because if he can wait and save up the money or make more informed decisions about which trips he wants to go on, then they'll be like 100% enjoyable instead of having some percentage of having that little twinge of guilt or anxiety or that kind of negative feeling associated with putting himself into debt.
Hi, my name is Shaisha, and I am from the San Francisco Bay Area, and I just had a comment regarding consumerism and really just purchasing things, changing your mindset when it comes to items and consumerism. I know once I had kind of made the shift when it comes to wanting to go out and buy things, I had also struggled with the second part of that is once I did buy something I needed, I kind of felt that heart racing, satisfaction, even though I'd worked on one part of keeping myself from wanting all these things to go and buy. Once I went and bought things I actually needed, I couldn't really control that feeling of, I got this, I need to open it right this second, I need it, I'm so excited. And I that wasn't a healthy feeling to have this rush of adrenaline just because I bought something. So something that I've been doing recently to try to combat that and to work through that is even when I buy something that I say I need, I will not let myself pull it out of the bag for a certain amount of time. So for example, I just bought a new dress, a black dress, and I bought it intentionally because it was good quality and I knew that it would be very diverse and I could use it for a lot of different things. And I was so excited about this black dress, and I got this adrenaline rush, and I felt good because I knew that it was something I actually needed, but it was also an unhealthy excitement. So I kept it in the bag for a week, and I didn't let myself pull it out because I needed to give myself time to recognize that this is not bringing me true satisfaction. This isn't bringing me true adrenaline and excitement. Yes, I bought it, and I have it, and I wanted to be able to get to that place where, okay, I've satisfied the need, but I also am not letting it be the false satisfaction towards want, if that makes sense. And so that's just one little tip that I've been using to kind of combat those unhealthy, systems that we've created in our brain to want and need and consume. So, yeah, the tail end even working on that rather than just that front end of finding all these things that you want to need before you go and buy them, but also that tail end of once I buy this, not letting it become this overwhelming adrenaline rush.
All right, y'all, that's it for this episode. If you leave here with one message, of course, we hope it's this. Love people and use things, because the opposite never works. Thanks for listening.
We'll see you next time.
Every little thing you think that you need, every little thing you think that you need, every little thing that's just feeding your greed. Oh, I bet that you'd be fine without it. Every little thing that you gotta have, every little thing that you gotta have, you gotta reach for, and you gotta grab. Oh, I bet that you'll be fine without it. So tear your eyes away, or tear